Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
On this Friday morning edition of Sidelines. Got a great lineup for you today. Broadcasting from Memphis. And Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South, will join us in the first segment. And they cover college football, not just in the South, but all over the country. You're definitely going to want to follow. They have a great team. Doug Dean checks in the second segment, AU Dose in Birmingham. He has a lot on his mind. Also, he's a great writer. We'll make some comments on what's happening in Auburn, the SEC, and around the country. Hour number 2, Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline in Oxford, will check in. Also, the Texas duo of Bo Carter, National Football Foundation, Baseball Writers of America, and Ken Capps, Football Writers Association of America. They've been at Big 12 Media Days this week, which have been going on. Of course, we start SEC Media Days Monday up in Nashville. We'll be heading up Sunday afternoon to Nashville for the week. That's going to be a lot of fun at the Hyatt there on Broadway. Hey, follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. Central. 25 shows at least a month, 50 hours of content. We talk college football, basketball, baseball, talk some pro sports as well. Tennis, hunting, fishing, cover a lot. Follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel and tell your friends about it. If you're interested in being a sponsor, email us, Rob Browne, Browne with an E, Sidelines with an S, RobBrowneSidelines@gmail.com. Have a large audience, a lot of listeners, great demographics on this crowd. But you're not going to be much of a coach if you don't have the Jimmies and the Joes. If you host a show, you better have great guests. We're going to bring on Connor O'Gara. You talk about somebody that takes his craft seriously. You can say all you want about journalism today. This guy gets it, true grit journalism. Connor, I watch you a lot. And you got a baby, about a month old. Congratulations. I've got 4. Nothing will motivate you more to get up early in the morning and go to work and whatever than having kids. So God bless you, man. I love it. And thanks for coming on with us.
Yeah, appreciate you. I can't fathom the idea of 2 at this point, and 1 has been kind to us, might I add.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we're losing our minds over here. Like we're good. Some days are tougher than others. Just grateful to have a baby who mostly sleeps through the night. But man, Godspeed to anybody that has 4. That to me, like I have a new appreciation for people that can handle that.
Yeah, I mean, I remarried and picked up number 4, and she went to Alabama, and she still gets to stay with us. Love her, Mallory, over in Atlanta. I got him in Richmond, I got him in Charlotte, I got him in Jackson Hole, and I got him in Atlanta. So it's fun. But Connor, love what you're saying about college football. You always have a really positive outlook, but you tell the stories that are going on. We got media days coming up, and I'm sure Greg Sankey will have a lot to say in his opening address. What are some questions that come to mind that if you had a one-on-one with him or you're in that room, Commissioner Sankey, Connor O'Gara, Saturdays Down South, I got to know this.
I got to know what the future of the conference schedule is going to look like. Yeah. And I know there are people like Kirby Smart who have said that's a totally overrated concept, but it's very bizarre to think that they just have this lined up for 2024 to have the 8-game conference schedule when it looked like all the momentum was heading towards a 9-game conference schedule. And then we find out there's this stalemate between the SEC and ESPN. And what is it going to look like after 2024? Because I'm of the belief that they'll eventually get to 9. But obviously, if you're looking at this from the standpoint of ESPN's like, hey, well, we already got you in for a 10-year contract. We don't necessarily need to all of a sudden give you this just to do right by you. And we think people are going to watch the SEC no matter what. People are going to watch the SEC if you're playing, Jacksonville State or whoever, as opposed to, Auburn and Georgia on a given Saturday. People are going to watch. And so the ESPN is kind of like, well, we don't necessarily need to do right by you just because you want to add an extra conference game. And so I would be fascinated to know what those conversations actually look like behind closed doors. Greg Sankey's not going to divulge that, but at the same time, I think that's going to be a constant topic of conversation. NIL is, of course, going to be discussed. Federal legislation with that. We know that Sankey took a trip to Washington, discussed potentially getting some help from the federal government. If we're going to have any sort of resolution on that in the near future, remains to be seen. But it is the last year of this era of college football, of the 14 playoff era, and obviously the last year of the 14-team SEC. So I think there will be a lot of things that Sankey will have to address about the future of the sport.
Yeah, and Connor, here's a question. When the SEC demanded that the states of Georgia and Mississippi change their state flags, or else there would be no conference championships in those states, do you foresee a possibility where Commissioner Sankey tells the state of Texas, because A&M and Texas have an NIL rule that the state legislature has put into play, that we don't give a damn what the NCAA says, we're going to do it our way? You think Commissioner Sankey might say, well, if you're part of the SEC, you're going to do it our way? You think we're going to see a standoff there?
Yeah, we could see something like that. I mean, because I think part of the reason that you add Texas is to reap the benefits of feeling like Texas is an SEC state. And at no point in human history have we said that. I mean, at no point has that been realistic, even while A&M has been a member of the SEC. I think there is a desire to have events in the state of Texas and to host things like media days there, and to host a conference tournament for men's and women's basketball in the state of Texas. And there is definitely a certain bit of, well, hey, let's play by our rules. Let's follow the beat of our drum, because we want to be able to expand our footprint. And Greg Sankey, I know he's talked a lot about how the SEC is kind of entrenched in this region of the country, poking fun at the Big Ten for not being a regional conference anymore and for being essentially coast to coast, and sort of, being willing to part ways with their geographical ties with adding USC and UCLA. And Greg Sankey wants to make Texas feel like it is an SEC state. And so being able to come out and say like, hey, this is how it's going to look with this. Here's how it's going to look with that. This is what we need if you truly want to be part of this conference, and if you want to reap the benefits that other states have.
Yeah, and talking about the Big Ten, and a lot of people in the SEC look at the matchups head to head. And mostly what we're going on is bowl games in January, but they're probably about 500. I know Ohio State is 2-9 against SEC teams in bowl games. Again, unless it's for the national championship or semifinal in the playoffs, I don't think we can I think we overrate what happens in those games. The Big Ten plays damn good football. You grew up in Illinois. I've got my good friend Brock Kreitz, who played at Ole Miss, from Naperville, Illinois. He gave me one of the greatest sayings ever. Instead of a cold beer, Bobby, he goes, how about a road soda? That's what they call it up there. But, hey, he played for Billy Brewer, Joe Lee Dunn, and then 3 years with Tommy Tuberville, and started. And Brock's claim to fame is the 96 Auburn-Georgia game. He and Walker Jones ran down Hines Ward in the middle of the field at Sanford Stadium to save the victory for a 46 scholarship players on the roster in Sanford Stadium for Ole Miss in Tuberville's second year. But I think the Big Ten plays damn good football. And you grew up there. We underestimate what they do. I'd like to see a regular season deal like in basketball with these conferences. Are you for that?
Yeah, I would be. First of all, I've never heard of a road soda. Where I'm from, we call it pop. I have to check myself every single time I debate between pop and soda, and I end up just saying both. And I'm like, hey, whatever works for you. It depends on the demographic that I'm speaking to. But I can say this as somebody. Look, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. My first memories of college football were going to, ironically enough, Northwestern football games. I went to Indiana. My mom went to Illinois. Like I spent time out in Nebraska covering Nebraska football. My first role with our company was running our Big Ten site, Saturday Tradition. Like I understand Big Ten football and that dynamic. So trust me when I say this Power 2 that we're moving towards, that's going to begin in 2024 when USC and UCLA join the Big Ten, when Texas and Oklahoma join the SEC. It is Power 2 financially only. That's it. And look, I know there are a lot of people in the Big Ten that can say, oh, you know what, the SEC is overrated here, the SEC is overrated there. Think about this. I would consider the 4 big revenue sports to be men's basketball, women's basketball, college football, college baseball, right? Like I think we can agree on that. Those are the 4 big revenue sports. LSU this past school year won 2 national championships in those 4 big revenue sports. The entire Big Ten in those 4 big revenue sports, if you look at school years that started in the 21st century, just school years that started in the 21st century, 2 national championships in those sports. Ohio State winning a national
this
championship,
wow.
Jim Tressel, Ohio State winning a national championship with Urban Meyer the first year of the playoff era. That's it. So if we're talking about a power 2 here and all those things, like, look, we can talk until we're blue in the face about how the 8th best team in the Big Ten is actually just as good as the 8th best team in the SEC. You know what people don't remember 10 years from now is that they remember championships.
Yeah.
And that's the issue right now with the Big Ten, is that you might have a really good case to be made for that. And on a given day, you can point to bowl results and say, this, look at when South Carolina lost to this team, or when Iowa beat, this team in this bowl game. But in reality, it comes down to championships, and that's what's still holding the Big Ten back.
Yeah, and that's why I'm for a regular season. I think it would be better. Let's send Florida to Penn State in November and Michigan to the Swamp in September for the 11 a.m. burn at the state game. But let me ask you real quick before we head back down south, because I grew up, I'm older than you, doesn't mean anything, but I just remember when Nebraska never won fewer than 9 games forever. Bob Devaney came there from Wyoming, 62 to 72. And since 62, they have never had a game that wasn't sold out. You covered Nebraska. They got a lot of money there. Great medical school. Endowments probably pushing $2 billion. And they got Warren Buffett is a big Nebraska fan. When he dies, who knows what he's going to leave them. But they can't put Humpty Dumpty back together. Do you foresee Nebraska being a top 5, top 10 program anytime soon with the current coach they've got?
No, I just don't. And look, I think what you had in the 20th century was so special, and that will never be taken from Nebraskans. And I kid you not, like I've been to a bar downtown Lincoln on a given, I think it was a Saturday night or something in March. I was there for like state basketball or something like that, and they're watching on a projection screen like replay of '95 national championship. And it's like a live game with the atmosphere and like people cheering. I'm like, that was in 2014. Yeah, that's the type of stuff that we're talking about here. And it's sad because it's such an unbelievably loyal fan base, and a fan base that I think is really legitimately smart and understands things. But obviously, when you've fallen on the times that they have, you'll hope that anything can happen. And I'm old enough to remember when they said, well, if Scott Frost can't do it, nobody can do it. And Matt Rule is getting this different sort of pass. And I'm very much in wait and see mode because I think the game has changed. I think Nebraska is no longer at the forefront of strength and conditioning like they were with Tom Osborne. And I think it's a much tougher climate to be able to win when you're trying to recruit nationally, because obviously the in-state talent is just not where you need to be to sustain what you are trying to do. And it is truly baffling to see. But no, I don't think there's any world in which they're a top 5, top 10 program just because of what they did in the 20th century when they were very much ahead of the curve and lifting weights when everybody thought it would stunt your growth. I mean, that's the type of success that they were built on. And to this point, they have not shown in the 21st century that they can hang not just with the big boys, but even with the good teams in college football.
Yeah, and you go back when Boyd Epley was hired as the strength and conditioning coach at Nebraska, I think he made $500 a month is what he was paid. And when Nebraska would go to the Orange Bowl, they would take an 18-wheeler full of weight training equipment. They took their own equipment on the road with them. But, yeah, it's changed. All right, we're going to head back down south. You're in Orlando, and I heard we had Allie Peak Wilbur on the show with us. She's on with Buddy Martin a lot on the Buddy Martin show. She covers the Gators. Her husband played in the team in 06 that won the national championship. Brother played on the 08 team. And Gus Malzahn made a statement. UCF is part of the Big Four. And she goes, hold on a second there, Gus. Florida State, Miami, we know what they've done. Talk about that UCF program. They're going in the Big 12 now. You're right there in Orlando. You got a front row seat that nobody else has.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when I first moved here, I moved here in 2015, and they had a winless season. I remember when there was that bar down here that was serving free beer until UCF won their first football game, and now here they are. I mean, not very far after that time in which they're like, hey, we're part of a power conference, and I totally get it. And it, like, I would point to when they were starting to really begin their rise, like 2017, 2018. It's like, man, how's this not happened for a long time? Then you kind of realize, like, oh, well, this program really hasn't been around very long. It's only been around for 2 decades, and it's very hard to establish yourself as a program that gets that kind of respect, especially when we're writing you off for having a winless season, in what you're doing beforehand. So, they're not necessarily there is not a big four. That doesn't exist. Like, look, the fact that TCU finally got over the hump and gave the Big 12 its first playoff victory, that's all well and good. That's great. But if we're sitting here pretending like UCF is playing at the same level that SEC teams are playing at, even Big Ten teams are playing at, I think that'd be, a bit ridiculous. But at the same time, is there a tremendous opportunity? Yeah. I mean, you've seen it, and the marketing that they've done to really kind of get behind some of that stuff with the way that college football works now, and NIL and all the efforts that Gus Malzahn has taken. I give them a huge round of applause. And I think there's a massive opportunity, especially if and when they can get that new stadium built, kind of TBD on all that stuff. But I do think that it is a program that has had this very meteoric rise, and we might not even process how meteoric it's been.
Yeah. Let's look now at Miami and Florida State and Florida. Florida is talking about a $400 million renovation of the Swamp. Hopefully they're not going to make any aesthetic changes. And I don't even know if Steve Spurrier is on the panel, but I listen. I keep up with what goes on at Florida closely, as you do. Florida State, anyone that didn't think Mike Norvell would succeed at Florida State didn't watch him at Memphis. And living in Memphis, I watched the guy. He's a hell of a coach. Would you agree?
I would, but at the same time, like, how many times we're just talking about Scott Frost? Scott Frost was supposed to be a sure thing in Nebraska, and you realize, like, there is just nothing guaranteed in this sport. And we can think, oh, this is a home run hire, that's a home run hire, but until you actually see these people in these situations, it is really hard to forecast whether or not someone's going to work out. And I would have said in the middle of last season, if I'm betting yes or no, is Mike Norvell going to be the coach at Florida State in 2023? I would have bet no. And I would have said, look, man, this is a difficult job. I think that Jimbo Fisher, like, everybody wants to criticize him, and understandably so. But one of the things that he was able to recognize is, like, you guys are way behind the times in terms of facility upgrades and understanding the opportunity that's available there. And so that was always kind of the question I have, is, like, what kind of rebuilding job is this really? And Mike Norvell, to his credit, was able to keep that team together, and they played so well down the stretch last year. Now they come into this year with so much momentum. They're the offseason good vibes team, number one in the country in terms of percentage of returning production, the great stat that Bill Connolly puts together. And they have that opener in my neck of the woods here in Orlando against LSU. But Mike Norvell has shown that he can handle some stuff. Like, there's a lot of people probably last year, middle of last season, saying, hey, he's gone. And that team came together and they played really good football. Jordan Travis was a joy to watch. And I don't know how many Florida fans had to, how that whole deal with watching him just escape every single time he dropped back, how that one has sat for an entire offseason. But I can't imagine it's felt very good. Florida State kind of has what Florida is hoping to obtain, which is a program that looks like it has a really bright future and a quarterback that it can rally around. And I think Florida State capitalized on a major opportunity last year with the second half of last season, knowing that Miami and Florida are both down right now.
Well, I mean, you look at Florida, located in a talent-rich state like that, from SEC founding in 1933 until 1991, although 84, Florida won it, but they vacated it, the SEC championship. 90, Spurrier's first year, they won it, but they couldn't win it. But 58 years in the league before their first deal. And 89 to 09, Florida's the winningest program in college football. 8 conference championships, 3 national championships, and then they hit this stride. Billy Napier coming up on year 2, your outlook for him?
Not promising. There's really not a whole lot you can sell yourself on. Now, there's a difference between, is Billy Napier on the hot seat versus am I worried about what this year looks like? I'm more so the latter. I don't think that Florida is about to pay a $32 million buyout. I don't think Scott Strickland is about to fire the guy that he invested somewhere close to like $60 million into, if you consider the support staff and all those different things, the investment into Billy Napier. But here's the issue. You're looking at all these preseason quarterback rankings, and that's going to be a topic of conversation throughout SEC Media Days. Graham Mertz is like sitting there at 13 or 14 in all of them. And this is year 2. And if you would have said that Florida going into year 2 of the Billy Napier era has a quarterback at that kind of standing, it's, oh, well, Anthony Richardson was awesome then. Year 1, he went to the NFL. He fulfilled all his potential. No, he didn't. He didn't sniff all SEC. This offense was a disaster for too much of last season, and Billy Napier never quite figured it out. And so the questions that we have going into this year, all right, Billy Napier is a play caller. What's he doing here? Does he know like which guys he should be getting the rock to? Trevor Etienne only getting 9 carries per game last year was a joke, in my opinion. Needs to be able to get the football more. Can they build around that run game, which looks really promising? Are they going to actually have somebody on defense who knows what they're doing in Austin Armstrong? When you go out and hire a 20-something defensive coordinator, that's a pretty bold statement to make. Are you going to look good there after 3 years of the worst 3-year stretch in the history of Florida football in terms of on the defensive side of the ball? Like, all these questions we just don't really have answers to yet because you haven't been incredibly active in the portal in the way that Hugh Freeze has. And are you able to rise above some low expectations? Maybe it's good that Billy Napier is working with probably the lowest expectations that any Florida coach has had in the 21st century. Maybe that's good, but at the same time, I think that Florida fans are going to get real anxious if this is looking like another 6-6 or even a 7-5 type season.
Yeah, I mean, once your mind expands from its original size and you win national championships, fan base, I don't care what school it is, you can say, oh, our fans are good. No, it doesn't. I mean, you look at fans at Auburn. My wife's a Tennessee fan. She goes, y'all get mad when the other team gets the ball. She goes, y'all win a game 56-3 and Alabama wins 63-0. How did we let that field goal get? And it's the world we live in. But you've got a great take. I love that take on Florida State. Mike Norvell, he got them rolling the 12 wins in his 4th year. But the Florida State, when the facilities are, you call them third world, whatever, but they're pathetic compared to everyone else. Money-wise, they've only been playing football since 1947, 48, something like that at Florida State. Everybody else in the SEC started in 1892. Is that alone the reason why they have such poor facilities? They have a ton of students and alumni. I mean, what are they not doing that you think they should be doing to raise money to build facilities at Doak Campbell Stadium?
No, I don't think it's that. I think it's more so this belief that, and like the entire state of Florida really struggled from this. Like, really, you could look at Miami and what they had to do in order to convince Billy Napier, or not Billy Napier, but Mario Cristobal to come on board from Oregon. Yeah. And that initiative, the $30 million initiative, and Florida, they just had their new facilities open last year. And now we're talking about the big stadium renovation, all these different things. When you are in the state of Florida and you can recruit as well as you can in a given year, even in a bad year, you're telling yourself, well, you know what? I don't know that recruits care so much about our facilities. We live in the Sunshine State. We get great weather all year round. We don't necessarily have to worry about this and put all of this time and energy into this. And when you've been good for as long as those programs have been good, you tell yourself, well, we don't necessarily need that in order to win. And I think the sport changed a lot in the last 15 years, maybe even just the last 10 years with the influx in TV contracts and not necessarily having to grovel to boosters to ask for this or ask for that in the same way that you might have used to. And I think that has just kind of changed. And so those 3 programs really all struggled to get the facility upgrades that they probably needed, because when you can recruit as well as you can within your own state, and you've also had the success, you don't necessarily feel that sense of urgency that a lot of other programs feel.
Yeah. And I go back to talking to late Florida coach Charlie Pell's widow last year on the show, Ward Pell. And I said, not just because he was your husband, but as much as Steve Spurrier did, I was in college when Charlie Pell came to Florida at 79 from Clemson. They went 0-10-1 his first year, but he sat on the front porch with a man named Mr. Ben Hill Griffin and ate swamp cabbage, is what Ward Pell said. They sat there for hours, didn't talk a lot about anything except life. And Mr. Ben Hill Griffin wrote Charlie Pell the largest check in Florida athletics history after that meeting. But I think you're right. You live sometimes, you're the son of a family with billions of dollars, and you were born on home plate and thought you hit a grand slam. It's easy to live in a state like California and Texas. Look at California and Texas, 1 and 2 in the country for high school football talent. And in the last 50 years, the state of Texas has won 1 national championship in 2005 since 1970. And it's 53 years. And the state of California was Southern Cal, but other than that, it ain't happening.
Yeah, it's weird. It is weird because again, and I think that's how the sport has changed so much, is that it's, you're not so much geographically tied. And when you have so many of these programs now that come into your state and recruit nationally and spend so much more to be able to do it, and the accessibility is just different. It's not, oh, you're recruiting to be able to get from just to be able to get driving distance, guys that you can make a 5-hour drive and go and get.
Yeah.
Like, I thought Tennessee during the 90s was kind of this team that sort of was at the forefront of that, of being able to go to the West Coast and to be able to recruit in that area of the country and say, hey, we want to recruit nationally. Nebraska was a team that really benefited from that as well, saying like, hey, we're not just going to be limited to the guy to our own state boundaries. We need to be able to recruit nationally. And the programs that have gone into the state of Florida have obviously benefited from that, and programs that have gone into the state of Texas. I mean, it's kind of baffling to look at all of the great quarterbacks from the Lone Star State during the 2010s alone who have not gone to Texas and have gone other places, and a Johnny Manziel and a Baker Mayfield and a Kyler Murray and a JT Barrett and all these different guys you can point to. And you're like, man, like, and I'm forgetting several, by the way, just, it's crazy to think about it. Like, they're not going to Texas and they want to go to other places. And it's just, it's a little bit different. And we probably take that for granted.
Like Matthew Stafford, Highland Park there in Dallas, right by SMU, goes to Georgia. And no, you're right. Look, I know we run out of time. And as always, thank you so much for joining us. And I'll look forward to seeing you at Media Days in Nashville. Let people know how they can keep up with you. You obviously cover the South, but you've got a grasp on the college football around the country. And wouldn't you agree? It's kind of like an earthquake fault. What happens here, reverberates all over the country. But look forward to always having you on. Great takes on college football, folks. You got to follow Connor every day.
Yeah, appreciate that. SaturdayDownSouth.com. I always tell people, bookmark the website. He'll spend an afternoon just clicking around stories. He'll become a more informed college sports fan. And then I host the Saturday Down South podcast. We're once a week this time of year, but we will be 2 times a week coming up very soon, like pretty much post media days. Then we're two times a week for pretty much the rest of the year, and then into the spring and all that stuff as well. We talk just a ton of college football, and that's what we do. College football 365 days a year. That's the way that we do it at Saturday Down South.
Golly, somebody's got to do it. I do it too. I love it. But you are going to Media Days, correct?
Yes, I will be there. Looking forward to it. Yeah,
it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, man. Have a great weekend. And as always, appreciate the content. And I think the takeaway from all of this is about 20% of the quarterbacks in the state of Texas that are high schools, that are starting quarterbacks of the Division I schools, 20% of them in the country are from the state of Texas. That was it.
That's crazy.
It's interesting. In a typical year. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, you too. Connor O'Gara, always love his takes. Really has a grasp of what's going on in the national picture as well as in the South. He's located in Orlando. And I always say, Orlando is like the city. It's hard to meet somebody who was born and raised and grew up in Orlando, but Connor's from right outside of Chicago, covered Nebraska. And I got an interesting comment from a listener. Geography and steroid testing killed Nebraska's football program. Well, you had some guys on there that were just freakishly ghoulish looking. They were so big back in the 80s and the 90s. It was really unbelievable. They were taking kids. Now, they got everybody in the state they wanted, but they did recruit a lot off the West Coast. And I just looking here at a program that's the 3rd or 4th winningest program in the history of college football. And damn, they just can't get that momentum going. I don't know if you look back when Dr. Tom Osborne retired after the 97 season. Goodness, he'd won national championships in 94, 95, and 97. And the guy that replaced him was a longtime assistant at Nebraska, Frank Solich. And he had a pretty damn good record in his 6 or 7 years at Nebraska, but it wasn't Dr. Tom Osborne. And they've been paying for it ever since. I mean, Bill Callahan or whatever was horrible. They started throwing the ball all over the field, and they brought in a guy that, from Oregon State, Rhett Riley. I just some of these coaches that they've brought in, they baffle the mind. Scott Frost was supposed to be, as Connor was talking about, supposed to be a home run hit. And his mother and father, the whole family pedigree, he played at Nebraska. Complete disaster. And I go back and I look and you say, how do you screw up a program that wins like Nebraska? How do you do it? Yeah, here's another one. Don't forget about Drew Brees from right outside of Austin, South Lake Carroll or Westlake, went to Purdue. Look, Texas, and nobody knows that program better than my friend Dave Cody, who listens every day. Looking forward to getting him on the show more often. He's got an Android. We will overcome the Android issue. Dave is beyond an encyclopedia. He's beyond a Library of Congress of knowledge of not just Texas, but the media, things in Austin. And yeah, they will be having media days in Austin quickly, I think, when Texas gets in the league. But if you look at the 131 Division I college football programs in America, in a typical year, 20 of the starting quarterbacks of those 131 schools will be kids who played their high school football in the Lone Star State. That's a hell of a statement. And then California is losing more people than any state in America. And when people say, everybody's leaving California, not true. It looks like it. If they're losing 370,000 people a year, it'll at the rate, it take a long time to run out of people. They still got about 38 million people. And Texas has 30 million people that we know of. I hadn't checked the turnstile at McAllen or Laredo or Brownsville today. But my goodness, if you were the head football coach at Texas or Texas A&M and you don't win, either you're not very bright or you're not trying hard. I mean, the state of Texas is absolutely just, it's the Lone Star State. And again, we're going to get more into it because we're in the second hour. Ken Capps will be on with us. Lone Star State, Bo Carter, Yancey Porter, a lot. But the state of Texas, again, you have everything. If you're the head football coach at Texas, to borrow the line from Big E, Ernie McCracken, in one of the great bowling movies of all time, when he's talking to Roy Munson, the Hook, and he says, "Man, you're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels. How do you screw that up?" That if you can't win at Texas, that's what you are. Doug Dean down in the Magic City, Birmingham, a mere 3 hours and 20 minutes away from the Bluff City, Memphis. Lot going on. I read your warm up this morning. I'm going to let you take it from here because read the dose, by the way. Awesome. Nobody has done a more detailed dissertation on a quarterback than Peyton Thorne, than my friend, the late Mark Green, did before Al Borges ever coached his first game at Auburn in 2004. He chronicled every play he had called when he was at Indiana and said, this is what Auburn will look like, and he knocked it out of the park. You have that same cerebral ability. Good morning. Happy grandson 2 now in 30 days.
Thank you, man. If I can't fake it that I'm not OULDE anymore, Rob. Once you have one grandbaby, maybe so you can fake some people out that you're still 55. But after Henry arrived June 10th and July 10th, Jack, I called that one right. I was batting 50%, but everybody's great. Both babies, both mamas, and God is good. But so it's great to move into that phase of life. Hey, I think we can make it now. It's sweltering heat. We're in mid-July. I'm going to steal a week from Alabama, this sweltering 90-degree heat, because tomorrow afternoon, I hop a plane to Kenai, Alaska for a week.
Yep.
So save some room in your freezer. I'll probably be dropping some sockeye on you because there's about 5 million sockeye poised in the Gulf of Alaska ready to come up. Well, it'll be if you look up escapement is a fun word in Kenai and Kasilof, Russian River.
Yeah.
There'll probably be about 3 million sockeye that come up the river in the span of about 4 weeks. Wow. Hard to believe. And
wait a minute, let me time out real quick. I got to ask you something. Yep. 5 million. Okay, break that down again. This is incredible because we've had a couple of big-time national bass fishermen on the show last Friday and again Tuesday. Mark Rose. We're going to try to get Jordan Lee on, who's from Coleman. But those salmon numbers are off the charts. Now, who's your competition up there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to make this a fishing outfitter show, but briefly, because it is fascinating. To me, there are very few fish that swim the waters, both freshwater and saltwater. In the case of the salmon, that both king and sockeye salmon, that they have this phenomenal GPS. You would think in their brain, but as a matter of fact, for those that haven't read up on it, the sockeye salmon, and I'm sure the king, they use their nose. They check out the chemistry when they're spawned up in the lakes at the end of the Kenai, or where the Kenai begins. They mark the exact chemistry of where they were spawned, and that's how they know how to come back to it. But as far as numbers go, right now the estimates are 5 million sockeye out in the Gulf of Alaska, Cook's Inlet to be specific, and then they monitor and manage the numbers for the commercial fishermen, the netters, because those guys are really efficient. If you allow them to, they could wipe out the population. They don't want to wipe out the resource. So then it gets into this. The sonar in the Kenai is at mile 19, Rob. The camp we're going to be in is at mile 25. So we've kind of got an idea when we call the number and they tell us what the counts were at midnight. Then it's about 3 or 4 hours from that is when the big numbers hit where we are. But it should all the escapement and the commercial fishermen nets, all of that's done. There should be an escapement of about 2.5 million salmon that come up the Kenai River.
Wow. Send some videos and some pictures. And if you can StreamYard in next week, we'll be at SEC Media Days. Would love to have some nice live shots while we're in Nashville.
Oh, so Media Days is next week.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to Lane Kiffin's show. He's one of the few that will really cut loose on it. Maybe Coach Saban will get controversial and fired up. I don't think we've got any other Steve Spurrier authenticity. I'd have to think through the whole roster. I don't think Hugh Freeze is going to get controversial.
I don't either. Yeah, I agree. Hold that thought. We hit a commercial break. Mildred's over here telling me right now, Paul, we got to take a break. We're going to take a break. Doug Dean with us right now. We come back. Got a lot to talk about college football on this Friday edition of Sidelines after this quick commercial break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
I want to say hello this morning to Austin Futrell listening over there. Runs the service department, Red River Ford Toyota, Wynne, Arkansas. Gets in there probably about 6:15, 6:30. Lives in Vandale, Arkansas. Great, incredible team. They have 25 service bays. Took my truck in there a couple of days ago. and it's fast, fixing something on the front wheel. But they're great folks. Red River Ford Toyota, Justin Wynn, the general manager, Rusty Howard, Greg Smith, Kevin, Brandon Boger, Cecil, Nate, Stacy, Randy, everybody. Great people to work with. Proud to have them as a sponsor of Sidelines. Doug, I am so glad for you getting to go up there. I'm cooling off thinking about you being in Alaska, because I talked to my clients that are up there. They were in Anchorage or Fairbanks when I talked to them Wednesday, but I'm already cooling off thinking about you being up in Alaska. So you got to do at least one day of StreamYard with us from the banks catching salmon.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've got good Wi-Fi. So, and there's all kind of, time. You can't stand at the Kenai 12-hour. Remember, it doesn't get dark till about 10 p.m. there.
God,
it's kind of weird when you need to get some shut eye. You think you have to close the blinds and the windows and convince yourself that it's midnight to go to sleep. But yeah, I should be able to join you if you like, especially.
Absolutely.
Let's find out, Rob, when Hugh Freeze, what day he's on, and if it's possible for me to jump on the morning after that, that'd be great.
Come on Wednesday. I think he's on Tuesday.
Okay, that Wednesday should work very well.
Yeah.
But except for the fact that you 2-hour time difference, so your ass is going to get me up at a crack of dawn. But
I think it's 3 hours is what Jim told me the other day.
Yeah, you might be right, but I'm the task. I'll just leave the cabin and go sit in the car or something. But you know what? We're getting real close to college football. If media days is next week, it's really exciting. I think most people that are listening have the unless you're an Ohio State fan, in which you figure you're certain you're going to win the national championship every year. Is it just me? There's probably a few humble Buckeye fans, but I just haven't met them yet. But I think everyone's thinking, is there anybody realistically who is going to put up a fight against Georgia or potentially Alabama to extract some of the boredom, some of the sameness? Now, it's not boring if you're a Georgia Bulldog fan. It's anything but. It's not boring if you're a Bama fan, but you're probably kind of pissed off at the course of events and the slight, I'll call it a slight shift in the balance of power. And the reason I call it slight, Georgia won 2 years in a row. But last year, if Georgia fans are fair, they got a big assist from Tennessee and LSU in not having to play Alabama. And maybe they would have beaten Alabama. I think they've got a team that was dominant in the trenches but you talk about Bryce Young being thrown into a one-game elimination. That's a big assignment for anybody. I was thinking, Rob, we are bringing the incredible iconic brands of Boomer Sooner and that iconic Longhorn logo into the SEC. So that moves us to 16 teams. Am I right?
Correct.
Starting next year. And it's interesting, kind of serendipitous, there's your word for the day, to me, that the game of chess, each player gets 16 pieces. Are you a chess player, Rob?
I used to play chess a lot, but not as much anymore.
Yeah,
my dog ate my chess set.
I'm not a grandmaster, but sometimes if I'm in an airport and I have time to kill, it's fun to play the computer on your smartphone.
Yeah.
But what's shocking is this is a game that goes back way past 900 years, the formal game of chess. And yet, between the Sicilian defense, the most popular chess openings, which were usually king's pawn, two steps forward, and then on the black pieces, different reactions. There's so many ways that a player can try to get control of the center of the board. Sometimes you can focus on developing your minor pieces like pawns or the castle move. And it's not even 20 years ago, Rob, that almost revolutionary, newly discovered chess moves come about when these grandmasters play each other. You would think 900 years plus that they'd everything that could be done had already been tried. And so why am I using that analogy? Well, I like the number 16. That's kind of fun. The ESPN should do a graphic on the SEC and use chess pieces. I'm already going to assign Vanderbilt to be a pawn at best.
Yeah.
But, as this all evolves, what I would be watching with enormous curiosity is what is available to Greg Sankey, the SEC, because we're the dominant player. You got to take the Big Ten seriously with how they're expanding.
Yeah.
But they win some actual playoff and championship games to elevate their brand, and they probably will. You can't dominate the SEC. The last 20 years hasn't won it every single year, but we've certainly won a majority. I'll add a chess piece that is not on anybody's board yet, and that's Notre Dame. To me, I would suggest to you offline, Rob, a media contract consultant that if you can get on the show would be very gripping, because the whole question that's interesting for Notre Dame, which is a massive queen or rook or castle chess piece on the entire landscape of college football. Why is that? Because they have a long time love affair with NBC, as you know.
Yeah.
But what's a little off the radar is, they re-signed Notre Dame, NBC did, in April 2013. And that was at the best of times because Notre Dame had just had an undefeated regular season. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that was tarnished by the wax job that Alabama gave them.
Yeah.
But it's still, I know there's some Notre Dame hate out there that I've always been puzzled by. And it's not their fault that they built a national brand, that really a global brand, if you follow Notre Dame. And some of that has to do with their faith-based connections and all across the country. But they that was a 10-year. They had typically been doing a 5-year extension with NBC, and that year, 2013, kind of, I guess, wisely by the Irish, they made it a 10-year extension through 2025. So what's going on right now, their mantra in South Bend, I've read, is survive till 25. And what they mean is, it's financially kind of tricky right now. They have some affiliation with the ACC for games, but I don't see the Irish as a good fit at all with the ACC. As you know, Florida State and Clemson are up in arms about the fairness of revenue distribution. So that league is on life support potentially. And it just doesn't it? Is it just me, or I think there's two chess moves for Notre Dame. One that's powerful is to stay independent, but that's probably going to mean they got to get to 60 or 70 million with NBC, and it's got to be profitable for NBC and profitable for Notre Dame, or they are the darling of the Big Ten, and they have such a logical connection with rivalries and scheduling over the years, the Big Ten. So what I'll be watching, and then I'll shut up and let you react, Rob, is will the Irish, as good a brand as that is, and to get yourself on TV with that gold helmet, and especially if you can beat them, that's a program builder. Will teams in the Big Ten continue to be able and willing to schedule out of conference games with Notre Dame? I would think so, but that might get challenging when you're talking about coaches wanting to keep their job and you're already playing a brutal schedule, even in the Big Ten.
Look, what you said's right. If Notre Dame, let's say they did go to another conference, the Big Ten schools are not going to do anything to help them. It's always been a geographical deal. My friend Pete Cordelli, who coached at Notre Dame with Lou Holtz and won a national championship up there, he gave me a great perspective in about Notre Dame. It's a national brand, and that's why they've always had those end-of-the-year games either at Southern Cal or at Stanford, because they rely so much on California. But there are 70 million Catholics in America. They have a powerful brand. The program hadn't won a national championship since 1988. The one thing about the SEC, the geographical footprint is contiguous. So logically, that makes sense if they join the SEC, because Kentucky borders Indiana. They call that area Kentuckiana. I think it'd be a lot of fun to have Notre Dame. The Catholic Church is experiencing its largest growth in America in the Deep South. I mean, they've got a lot of fans down here. John Carroll, Pat Sullivan, I pulled out a jersey I have from 1970 yesterday. My parents brought back from the Auburn LSU game, 17-9, Mike Anderson. the Mike Anderson's restaurant in Baton Rouge, great place. He's the linebacker. He made that tackle in the rain. Wallace Clark was stopped right on the goal line. Heartbreaking loss. But a friend of mine, Todd Foray, one of my pledge brothers up in Athens, Alabama, was looking at it yesterday. He goes, what does that say on there? It says, best wishes to Max, Pat Sullivan. Max, my youngest son. And I got that in 2008. And that, he said that Notre Dame, of course, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, and everybody, but he's Irish Catholic. You can't get any stronger. I'm Scotch-Irish, Episcopalian, now Catholic. I could see Notre Dame. Look, nobody does pomp and circumstance and tradition better than the British, do they?
No.
Nobody does college football pomp and circumstance better than the SEC. I'll predict Notre Dame to the SEC. I'm with Doug Dean, and Doug. I see them coming not to the ACC, because that would be like Texas that drove Nebraska and other schools out. I see Notre Dame coming to the SEC. That makes sense to me.
And I've rarely
Yeah. Well, Doug, we lost you there for just a moment.
Yeah, I can't control an incoming call. Sorry.
No problem.
Other than hitting delete. So I will debate you, which you and I rarely do because we're both similar intellects, I guess, or we hang around the same experts. And nobody wants groupthink on this show, right?
No.
I'll be contrary, man. I would love it. Golly, I would love it if Notre Dame came in the SEC, because selfishly, one of my great dreams, and it's kind of shocking that the Irish and Auburn Tigers have never met in any game. And, I'm to the point where I've decided about the only way they will ever meet for now is because I thought maybe Alan Green, with it being an alum, would get us a match with Notre Dame, but nobody wants to play Auburn lately, and I guess who can't blame them. But Auburn and the Irish would meet in the playoff at best right now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a little while before Auburn realistically is back there. But wrap your brain around this. Notre Dame, I think it's the last several years, has one game, and this portends the evolution, potentially rapid evolution, of how money gets made with TV. They have a Peacock channel, the subscription streaming game, and I think last year it was UNLV. And NBC that was negotiated, and Notre Dame, what's intriguing to their brain trust in terms of marketing, football, and revenue and all that, is if you go on a streaming service like Peacock, you completely know who your viewers are, who your consumers are. Last year, Notre Dame averaged 2.43 million viewers on NBC, not Peacock. So if it's a per head, it's kind of like mixed martial arts, and you buy for $50, $100, whatever the market will bear, you buy that. What if what we think of as a big network channel right now that broadcasts games is 5 years from now is Peacock, because this subscription model just explodes. And on your show, we've talked, going back to when Jimmy was a part of it and others here, we've talked about, we squint our eyes with millennials and Z Nation, I call them. How will they consume college football in the future? And I'm not ready to write off the possibility that there will be some games, not the Iron Bowl, not the biggies like Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, but some games that are well worth watching that people are happy to pay $200 subscription fee and watch it streaming. But they better figure out to make it work well, because the Toledo game Notre Dame played, get this, Rob, the streaming was kind of slow, and Twitter showed Notre Dame's winning touchdown over Toledo before the Peacock channel did.
I did not know that. That's cool. My kids are 23 to 34. Yours are what age group? Same age group, right? They're in that demographic. Mine love to go to the games. Mine absolutely love to go and be a part of it. And I was talking with Wilson last night, my dad's 95th birthday. And that was fun. And he said 95% of the way to his goal. But he watches, he's 95. Now, he's an architect. He's got an iPad, iPhone, laptop. He's all over this stuff. And by God, if there's anything, he can't get the show in the morning, my phone is blowing up going, oh, I can't get anything. The consumer of college football, I think, will do whatever he's got to do. If he's got to crawl, if he's got to do whatever to watch college football. And I think, and look, Doug, Ken Capps, Football Writers Association of America, is on here with us right now. He's got a master's in journalism from Northwestern. You know, he covers all this stuff, Texas, like you're talking about. But Doug, you nailed it. You look at those streaming numbers. And Doug, 20 years ago, 100 million people were hooked up to ESPN in America. Now it's 73 million. But you know where those other ones are? There's 25 million of them on ESPN Plus, which is very difficult to figure out how to put on your damn phone. So someone can help me do that. I'm all ears.
Yeah. And Rob, welcome to the party there. Is it Ken?
Yes. Yeah. He's out in Dallas in the Metroplex.
Tell Mildred, Rob, that we need something a little bigger than type font 3 on these names for my poor eye vision. But Grandpa here. But back to the Peacock channel, you know, sometimes when you say something radical and you're trying to forecast huge seismic shifts in the strategic landscape of anything, and in this case, college athletics, especially football, you sound a little nutty. And you know, when you make economic or other forecasts, you're going to be wrong, probably 50%. Yeah. But this is not me, but Swarbrick, one of the experts that really know. It was a Notre Dame guy that was moving all these, and I think he's retired now. This is a direct quote. He said, from their Peacock, Notre Dame's Peacock single game subscription streaming experience, there was a lot of mistakes made, like coming back too slow from commercial break. Yeah. They can fix that. But he said, quote, we learned a lot and the benefits are clear, but the dynamic that we all see is that's where this is headed. ESPN, Swarbrick said, ESPN is talking about taking the entire ESPN direct to consumer, meaning subscription, streaming. And he said, I don't know, this will knock you back in your chair, guys. I don't know whether Peacock will be NBC in 5 years. It may be. Yeah. Is that shocking to even think about?
No, and before we go to Ken, I want Ken to answer, to give you a response on that. I'm going to make a prediction, which I've done. Apple buys ESPN because of this. Tim Cook is on the board of directors of the National Football Foundation, native of Robertsdale, Alabama, down there in Baldwin County. And I think that'll happen. So, Ken, in response to what Doug Dean in Birmingham said, Ken's a Longhorn graduate, but he'll be at Media Days with us. And we're all going to have a big party when we go to Austin. We're bringing the barbecue, and we're going to make all kind of Memphis-style barbecue. And Bill Hancock says he wants to do a barbecue contest with us, so we're going to do it. But Ken, respond to what Doug is saying, and now we bring in Bo Carter. So we got some – Doug, you nailed it. I love what you're saying in this thing about the Peacock. That's another one outside of Apple.
Break it down, Ken.
Well, I mean, Doug, you're exactly right. I mean, the landscape just keeps changing in all of these different streaming networks. And, I know just from talking to my friends, they're really, and I'll be 63 next month. So, don't hold that against me, but guys my age are really getting sick and tired of trying to figure out what streaming network to buy, and then they buy the streaming network, and then the one game they want, they can't get on there.
Yes.
And, their cable bill is already, over $200 a month. And it gets real frustrating.
Can you imagine the buffering locking up during the kick six play? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Right? No, I mean it's really something. And then there are the folks, I've had a couple of young folks that I've talked to that have been trying to explain to me how just to cut the cord all together and just put it all together with streaming networks. And so Trust me, I would like to learn this because your ESPN Plus is taking over a lot of things that I want to watch. And they did that with a lot of college baseball here towards the end of the season. And I don't have ESPN Plus, and I've been holding off on getting it. But I get the feeling I'm going to have to, get my credit card out for this college football season and get it because they're going to have a lot of good games on there, and because it's not on ESPNU, it's not on ESPN, it's not on ESPN two. So 100%, Doug.
Ken, since I've got you, before I get out of you guys' way, good to see you there, Bo. I have to ask, or first a compliment. That there's a lot to like about Austin, Texas, and I look forward to getting back. And I especially look forward to getting back. I don't know how many years it'll be when the Auburn Tigers can play Austin. But I think the Texas and, of course, the Sooners made the most timely, brilliant, strategic move, not without controversy to some, I guess, like the Aggies, but to fund a powerhouse, a machine, a marketing and brand machine. Nothing against the Big 12, but the SEC is really without equal. Big 12's Big 10 is trying to change that now. But is there exuberance or also a little apprehension about how quickly the Longhorns can adapt to, if you will, to the style of play that seems to dominate the SEC these days? Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, there's a lot of exuberance. I mean, that's what I'm talking about today with Rob and Bo and you guys is Big 12 Media Days. Bo and I were out there. They just wrapped up yesterday, and it was very interesting because there was definitely no love lost with the last Texas and Oklahoma Media Days there in the Big 12. And it was kind of like, bye, see ya, don't want to be ya. And a lot of the players were talking trash about how they wanted to send Texas and OU out with a loss, for their very last time playing them. And but I think there's a lot of exuberance on the part of Texas as far as getting in there. But I've always waved this word of caution. You looked at every Big 12 school that has gone to the SEC, and none of them have had very good success. Mm-hmm. Not one of them. Missouri, Arkansas, and especially A&M.
Yeah, inexcusable. The resource the Aggies have, it's inexcusable to do it better.
Yeah, I mean, and all of this. Y'all are making some great cases, and y'all were at media days. I don't want to see college football vanish in the middle of America or on the West Coast or anywhere. Right now, the SEC is on fire. And Doug and Ken and Bo, interesting conversation I had with Billy Roberts talking about a story. Harvey Schiller, former commissioner of the SEC in the late 80s, when he used to go to the big powwow for the college football conferences. He got there and they said, well, we're the Big Ten. And the way it works is the Big Ten and the Pac-10 sit up front. The SEC sits in the back. And General Schiller, remember, he was a general. Try telling the general that. And He said he issued a memo that day to his staff and said, from here on out, the SEC sits up front. End of discussion. So he then went to the NCAA and said, hey, I was just looking here at the rule book. And it doesn't say we can't have a divisional format or a conference championship game. And they said, well, it doesn't say that. And he goes, okay, thank you. Enough said. So Harvey Schiller, I want him on this show. And Doug, if you know him or anybody knows him, I'd love to have him because getting the best guest in the world is number one goal of a show. You can't win without the guest, can't coach and win without the Jimmies and the Joes. Doug, you had something to say.
Yeah, Rob, before I get out of the way, I feel a duty when you have me on to throw a little red meat to the Auburn family.
No, feel free.
That's what pays the bills for my sponsor. If my intel is even close to accurate, and you get a lot of everybody's undefeated in July and August.
That's right.
Yes.
Every quarterback savior. like Quinn Ewers. I think he is going to have a great year. Ken, I really do. Texas, to me, would be on my short list of sleeper team. Really not even a sleeper. They're probably going to be 10 or 15, but keep an eye on them. But Peyton Thorne, the Sparty transfer to the Hugh Freeze brought in, what I'm hearing about his work with receivers and especially his leadership, unless Robbie Ashford on athleticism and improved passing beats him out, which is not impossible, that Ashford really turns your head as an athlete. Peyton Thorne is causing me to rethink, is the ceiling 8 games for Auburn? I think the ceiling might be 9 games with a break or two, and that won't be even. The floor could be 6 games. I get the situation, but Auburn fans have reason to be cautiously optimistic about what Peyton Thorne brings to the table, especially when you look across the SEC. It's hard to find a team that has a proven quarterback coming back because Texas and Oklahoma aren't in the league this year.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, let me throw one back at you. I'll tell you who was impressive among the four new coaches coming into the Big 12, and that was Gus Malzahn. He really had a lot to say yesterday, and I asked him a question. Yeah, it's really interesting how the Big 12 does it. The coach comes and sits on a big podium and makes an opening comment, and then the reporters ask him questions. Then they come over to a media gaggle, and that's where you get your really good comments. And then they do it one more time with their players. So they actually talk to the media 3 times during the day. And so I wanted to save this question for the gaggle. So when Malzahn came over there after he got off the podium, I asked him, I said, Coach, you had a lot of success against Alabama in your career at Auburn. What would be your advice for Texas when they go to Tuscaloosa on September the 9th? And he had 2 words: buckle up. 2-word answer.
Well,
like that.
That worked for me.
Ken, you probably know from a little bit of a distance. I don't want to. I'm not in a position to speak for the entire Auburn family, for God's sake, but I know a lot of them, and I think I'm close. I don't think there's a great deal of warmth. I don't think there's any, lamentation that Gus moved on, especially if Freeze can do what we hope he can. But I will say, my instinct is that over 10 or 20 years, history will be kinder and kinder.
Yeah.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yes. No,
Yeah.
I think you're 100% right. And he really had command of the room yesterday. And I think he's going to be a good coaching addition to the Big 12 as far as his opinions and what he's going to do in the league.
Guys, I'm going to hope to jump on from standing in the Kenai River, Alaska next week. If problem and
I've already got you booked for Wednesday morning. I'll be in Nashville, and you're going to cool everybody off because it's going to be 120 every day.
Low goes down to 51 at night, high of mid-60s. I'm love the steal summer week from the state of Alabama. Y'all have a great week, guys.
Good to see you, Doug.
Thank you, Doug. I love it, man. He's heading up to Alaska. Tomorrow, I think, getting on the Greyhound. He'll get there Tuesday, fish Wednesday, and then come back. No, I'm kidding. Now, they're flying out of here, Birmingham, tomorrow. He goes every other year. Last year, we took him trout fishing up on the Spring River and to Rockbridge, Missouri, and caught a boatload of trout. I think the funniest thing was, my friend Boyd, who's, about 5'6", was in the canoe with former Alabama offensive lineman who played in the NFL 5 years, Wesley Britt. Wesley is 6'8", 350 pounds.
Dang.
And Wesley caught 41 rainbow trout.
Good.
So he'll be coming with us again this year, but great guy. Awesome. But I love what y'all just said. Here's my take. As an Auburn man, and I love my school. I don't hate anybody. I got so frustrated with Gus because I saw what he's capable of doing, but the Bible always treat people like you want to be treated. And I get frustrated. I get mad, but I mean, I know what he did for Auburn, and I know he people, look, everybody's different. People could say something about all of us, Doug, all of us, but damn it, he creates a lot of excitement. And I don't want to see the Big 12 dissolve, and I don't think it's going to happen. That Central Florida fan base, you guys, I tell you, if y'all want to talk to somebody really good, Allie Peak Wilbur, I saw her on the Buddy Martin show, had her on the show earlier this week. Incredible story. She, of course, went to Florida. Her father played for the Gators. Her husband played on the 2006 national championship team. Her brother played on the 2008 national championship team. And she's the one who said, Gus, hold on a second about this Big Four. But she said they have an extremely rabid fan base down there. I mean, they're Cincinnati, Houston. Now, Houston's a mystery to me. 23% of the people that live in Houston were not born in the United States. It's an incredible city. And then you've got BYU. Get the Dr. Peppers ready. But, guys, I think the Big 12, what about Arizona? What about Colorado? What about Utah? I mean, what about Arizona State? So there was a lot of cool stories there. So, Bo, Ken, let's get her going. Orange whip, orange whip, orange whip, orange whip. Here we go.
And big controversy. They've been going on for about a week and a half. Is Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark had unofficial meetings with Memphis. He denies it. The media keeps saying it happened, but he's looked at Gonzaga, Memphis, San Diego State. Amazingly, Ken, to me, SMU's not in the mix. I think TCU again is trying to keep SMU out of the Big 12 if they can, they've done with the Conference USA. But Rob, you hit the nail. He would love to get those four corner states and have a 16-team conference. They're back in the, they're really in the thick of the college football playoff expansion if that happens.
Well, and the thing is, Rob, is that what Yarmack talked about the first day of media days, what he's all about is branding. And he's losing his biggest two brands of Texas and Oklahoma. And so what he's trying to do is, he sees BYU as a brand, and they have a very solid brand. And, and that's what your buddy Malzahn was talking about. They're trying to build their brand out there in California. I mean, it's California, in Florida. So, I mean, when you have a league that's,
Brett,
3 time zones, he wants to build that coast to coast brand for the Big 12, not only in football, but also in basketball. And like Bo alluded to, he's also been trying to get Gonzaga to join the Big 12 in basketball.
Yeah.
And that'd be a huge get.
Oh, yeah. Well, Yancey Porter's on with us right now on this Friday roundtable. I love this. It's my Mississippi guys and Ken's from Texas. The Yancey Porter Rebel Yell Hotline. Check them out Monday nights, 6 p.m. Sports 56 WHBQ and Super Talk Mississippi. It's 2 syllables. It's not Mississippi. It's 2 syllables. And you know how I learned? I always tell Yancey this. As a young boy, I was pretty smart. I used to go to the cheerleading camp they had for the college cheerleaders, and a bunch of us would ride our bikes over there and just dream big. But they would have all the cheerleaders there, and the Ole Miss cheerleaders used to do this cheer for Ole Miss. Go MISSI, PPI. That's how I learned how to spell Mississippi. It's kind of like directions. Don't ask me to write them down, but I can get us there. Yancey, how in the world are you? As Mel Slim Pickens would say, what in the wide world of sports is going on in Oxford today? You're on with Ken Capps out in Dallas and Bo Carter in Carrollton, Texas, just north of Dallas, but almost in Oklahoma.
Right.
I'm doing great, guys. How about y'all?
Good to see you.
Man, good. We've been talking about SEC Media Days coming up, and these guys have been at Big 12 Media Days all week long. I want to get your thoughts on it. Are you a fan of college football, not just for Ole Miss, the SEC, but nationally? Because I think it's great for America. It's like NASCAR. It's like tennis. When those sports are good, I think about when John McEnroe was rolling, Ronald Reagan was in the White House. God bless America, man.
I am, but I'll tell you what, as the SEC would get stronger and stronger and stronger, it's the interest nationally for me with the other conferences gets a little less and less. I'll just be honest.
Yeah. Well, is the SEC, Ken, Bo, y'all weigh in on this. Brett Yormark came from the entertainment. He understands marketing. You're going to have a conference
Came
in
from New
3.
York.
Yeah, New York. Yes. So you're going to have Central Florida in the Eastern time zone, then all the Central time zone schools, and then you're going to have the Mountain West. You're not going to have any Pacific, are you?
No,
Okay. So
Not yet.
not yet.
yeah, yeah. But we know your thoughts on that. I mean, Ken, you're going to be at SEC Media Days, and you know the Big 12 really well. Or Bo, your thoughts about where we go from here? Because the thing that ESPN's got to do, and the networks, is keep people around the country interested in games every time there's a game.
Well, I think there's going to be no problem with that because you know the one thing that I think that you're going to see is some really creative scheduling when it comes to the Big 12 after Texas and OU leave, and to make sure that that, and it's going to be kind of tough on BYU, but they're going to be going to the Eastern time zone, and they're going to be playing. And they're going to be playing the Central Floridas of the world, and I think that's going to be good. But Cincinnati, don't forget about Cincinnati. They're in the Eastern time zone.
Yeah.
And remember, they just played in the Final Four, 2 or 3 years ago. And so I think you're going to see a lot of creative scheduling like that. I think there's going to be a lot of trying to build new rivalries like Texas and OU. I was trying to figure those out. Bo and I were talking about that, eating our peach cobbler yesterday at lunch as the Big 12 media days were wrapping up there. We had to get some peach cobbler, but is TCU and Tech, is that going to be a big rivalry going forward? Because those are two old Southwest Conference schools that have gone on to the Big 12. And I mean, Joey McGuire out at Tech, he is really fire and brimstone out there. And then you've got, Sonny, what he's doing at TCU.
Yeah.
And the one school that really kind of disappointed me this weekend or this couple of days was Oklahoma State. Gundy came in there like he was just, like his car had just broke down outside of AT&T Stadium. He was grumpy. He was grouchy. He said, that Bedlam is done. I don't care. I don't want to, if we don't play it again, it's not my fault. It's Oklahoma's fault for moving to the SEC. And, that game has been played 117 times. So when it is played on November 4th, it'll be the 118th time. And, it's not exactly been, I looked it up. It's not exactly been to Oklahoma State's advantage because Oklahoma's won 90 of those games. And yeah, exactly. And Gundy's record is 2-15 in those games, but it's still bedlam. And I thought about you, Rob, and Yancey, because you guys, like we always talk about on this show, we are college football, about the traditions. We're traditionalists. Yeah. And to lose a bedlam, it's a big deal to me and to us. And, and somebody asked Gundy, well, what about playing it as a non-conference game? And he was just as grumpy and grouchy as he could be, and was like, hey, we're booked up for the next 15 years. We don't have time to play Oklahoma. And then they asked Venables about it yesterday. And he had enough on his plate getting peppered about, his team and how they're going to try to come back from 6-7. Venables didn't even want to touch it. He goes, hey, they don't ask me who we play. I just play who's on the schedule. And I was just really, really disappointed in that. So my point is to all that is that trying to find new rivalries that match a Texas OU and OU Oklahoma State, I think is going to be one of the things that your MAC is going to try to really put together in the scheduling in 2024 and beyond.
Yancey, you're talking about 118 times they're about to play that Bedlam game. The Egg Bowl has been played since electricity was invented, and it's a great rivalry but it's even more intense off the field. Could you imagine those two schools that are 72 miles apart not playing one another? I mean, I can't.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like Texas and Texas A&M,
Yes.
right? You know,
Yes.
I mean that was just absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe how long has it been since they played now?
12
2011.
years. Yeah.
I mean that's just that's insane. It's like Auburn, Alabama, Ole Miss State, Florida State not playing. I mean it just it makes no sense. They've got to figure it out. The ADs, they got to be the bigger people and just and make it work. Period.
Yeah. I'm with you. Yancey, you know, we're talking about Big 12, about SEC. And, you know, they just got through with media days. I like what they said about a big gaggle where the coach comes over there and everybody's just kind of around them as opposed to what we see in the SEC. It's kind of like, shoo fly, get away from me. You know, but without the fans and the interest and the stories written by the writers, the TV people, the bloggers, the web people, where would they be? Yancey, frankly, as Rhett said in Gone with the Wind, I don't give a damn. I'm tired of it. And seeing the media as pesky, they're the ones that have made this game, you know, so accessible to the fans. What's your thought on it? I mean, remember the days when, hell, I had Brock Kreitz on the show, my friend, a couple of weeks ago, talking about, you know, college football. And, of course, he played at Ole Miss. Hell, man, he played for Joe Lee Dunn, a guy one year that did not wear socks. Joe Lee Dunn. Sockless Joe Lee Dunn. Yancey, remember how fun it was to just go talk to the coaches? And people loved them. They knew them. Now, if a coach is on the hot seat, people are like, he's making what, 7, 8, 9 million a year. He's got generational wealth. He's going to get a $20 million buyout to go away. I don't have any sympathy for people like that. Do you?
Not really. I was in Destin last week, and there's a street down there that all the former coaches in basketball live on now. Now I went and said hello to a bunch of them, and you know they're living nice. So I don't know. I mean, I do feel for their families. You know, my wife is really tight with the former defensive coordinator here at Ole Miss from last year, Chris Partridge. Our daughters dance and travel together, and they're almost like family. So, you know, I do feel for them, especially the assistant coaches that aren't getting these 20, 40, $50 million packages. You know, they were in tears leaving. You know, they just absolutely did not want to leave Oxford. And, you know, they're, you know, making the journey over there to Michigan now. And I'm not talking about just the coach. I'm talking about their families. And so I do feel for the families. But, you know, the head coaches, when they get that $40, $50 million package and, you know, they're sitting on the beach with all their buddies and drinking margaritas. No, it's really kind of hard to feel sorry for them, to be honest. I wish it were me.
Yeah.
I tell you that.
Yeah. And you think, I mean, Ken, you know, Darrell K. Royal, and this is, I'm going to give you what people have told me over the years about him. He was so powerful, and he was an alpha male, no betas here. And, you know, and a lot of the elites at Texas, and you pick the school, they don't like that, you know, and a guy that's, you know, they consider to be, you know, country or redneck or whatever. I mean, those are the best people you'll ever meet, man. I mean, the older I get, the more, man, during the lockdowns of the virus, I could not thank and just hug enough truckers. You know, you'd see them out there going, thank you all for keeping the economy going, you know, and they're also the most loyal demographic for sports talk, radio, and podcast. Truckers, they listen religiously. And, you know, so I'm just saying, I care about them, but if you're getting 20 million, you know, Brian Harsin got $15 million to do nothing, just to go away. I would not have given him the money. I would have made him fight for it and said, failure to fulfill your job commitment. Read the job description. It's called recruiting. But either one of y'all respond to this. And again, getting to hang out with Darrell Royal. When Jackie Sherrill's on this show, he is so cool. And then he'll talk to you after the show and just privately, but that is a very smart man. These coaches, they're not dumb. But tell me about Darrell K. Royal. I did not know him, but I think he and Frank Broyles had a lot of respect for each other. That's what I love about sports.
Well, I got the incredible opportunity to play golf with Coach Royal several times. And, Coach Royal was a great golfer, played ready golf, and did not like people like me who were very bad golfers and played slow golf. But nonetheless, he was just as nice to me as he could possibly be, told jokes on the golf course, was just, but he would tell us the funniest stories that you could never tell, in public. And, but he was just the nicest guy. He would do anything for you. And, and of course, with Frank Broyles, I mean, this is going back a long way, but, I'll just never forget it. When Texas beat Arkansas in the game of the century, 15-14, and Texas was proclaimed number one there in 1969. Broyles and Coach Royal were hugging and crying, and at the middle of the field in Fayetteville. Most coaches today, when they're in a game like that, they just barely touch palms and go the other way. And these guys, I mean, this had been an emotional battle for them because they are good friends, and they were good friends their whole lives. Same thing with Coach Royal and Bear Bryant. They were great friends. They were great friends. And that was just the way it was back then. And it's too bad. It's too bad that it's not like that anymore, because you see now, and I don't like this at the end of games, that the coaches just barely acknowledge each other.
Yeah.
And then go away.
Yeah. I don't like that either. We're going to take a commercial break, but I'll tell you what really got me as a kid was when Shug Jordan was retiring at Auburn in the 75 season. Auburn went to Athens and just hugging his former player, Georgia coach Vince Dooley. And knowing that the Jordans and the Dooleys, have places next door to each other at Amelia Island, just the love and respect. And when they dedicated those statues October 8th of 2021, Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. in front of Jordan-Hare Stadium, to Clifford Leroy Hare and Pat Dye and Shug Jordan. In that audience there, when they unveiled them, was Gene Stallings, Vince Dooley, Lauren Smith, just, the number of people that were there from other schools, and the respect, that right there, that's how I think you're supposed to act, because I was raised that way, by my parent. I mean, and Johnny Vaught, I know people, Yancey, that knew Johnny Vaught up until he died. Unbelievably cool guy. And I think the more these stories are told, the more the younger generation understands it's not about having fights and, spraying people with water cannons. By the way, the 1986 Auburn-Georgia game, those were hoses. And if you hold them tight, they propel like a hose, but they were sprinklers. Now, they were technically sprinklers, but we did go to the Auburn-Georgia game the next year up in Athens wearing trench coats and rain hats because we thought we were going to get swamped. But Auburn won that game too. But anyway, we'll be right back. Great round table. Yancey Porter, Ken Capps, Bo Carter on this Friday edition of Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Browne broadcasting here from over here in parking right now before we go to Memphis. Got a big, as my grandmother called him, Starm. She was from Middle Tennessee, a Starm, S-T-A-R-M or S-T-O-R-M. Got a big one. You can hear the thunder in the background. I'm telling you what, it sounded like the remaking of a war movie. Good grief, it's getting really wild out there. Okay, Ken, saw that comment. I love that. And this is Scott Trout. If Bedlam ends, what is the biggest Big 12 rivalry game? Iron Skillet?
Yeah.
Tell me about, yeah, okay. Tell me
that's
about
SMU and TCU. Scott, that's a great point. SMU and TCU is a great one. Man, those guys, you know what we've talked about this on the show in the past. You know, you mix up Baylor and SMU and TCU, and you get all those Christians together. They play some pretty dirty football when they get together, man. There's a lot of unsportsmanlike penalties.
they do. Look, I mean, I like that question. And Ken, let's talk about that Big 12 media poll that came out and all, because again, they put those, media days this week. Next week's SEC, and it's as Spurrier called it, it's talking season.
Well, boy, it was pretty interesting, and Bo chime in on this too, because they put out the poll the day before media day starts, and so that was on Monday. Yeah. So the poll came out, and Texas was the overwhelming choice at number one, and Texas has not been picked number one since 2009. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's a long time. But so that gave every one of the coaches fodder when they came up to the podium to talk about how wrong the media is in their poll, and how and so Texas couldn't get too high on its horse because, as an example, and everybody, Texas Tech, Neil Browne and West Virginia are picked dead last. And so Neil Browne was talking about, somebody, he was on the beach with his family, and somebody from his office called him on Monday and said, "Hey, we've been picked last by the Big 12 media." And he said, "I was so pissed off, I got off the beach and went back to the office because I had to respond to that." So every coach was taking pot shots at the Big 12 media for picking Texas. But here's the thing. This is pretty interesting. So 2 years ago, the media picked Oklahoma. 2 years ago, Baylor and Oklahoma State played in the Big 12 championship game, and Baylor won. Last year, Baylor was picked to win the conference, and it was TCU and Kansas State who played in the Big 12 championship, and K-State won. Yeah. And then TCU goes on to play for the national championship. So it's going to be very interesting. I think Texas has a very good chance of winning, but Sonny Dykes made the comment. He was first on the diocese there on Monday. He says, I think this league has the most parity of any league in college football, that the last place team can beat the first place team any week of the season. And he compared it to the SEC. He said, there may be stronger teams at the top in the SEC. He said, but he says it's kind of hard to explain, but there are less, the weaker teams in the Big 12 are stronger than the weaker teams in the SEC. And so anybody can jump up in the Big 12. And we saw it last season, jumping up and beating the big dogs.
Yeah.
except TCU. You had Iowa State winning games. You had Kansas winning games.
Yep.
Baylor. And then you have TCU. They were picked 7th last year in the Big 12 media poll before media days. And then they go on to win play in the national championship game. So I was very interested in how much, just about without exception, all 14 coaches that went up to talk had some kind of pot shot or comment about the media poll. Bo, would you agree with that?
Yeah, that was one main thing. And the other one too, Robin and Yancey and Ken, every coach commented about the road trips, when you have to play at Provo at night and then get back to Morgantown, West Virginia at 7 a.m. Sunday. They're playing. They've got a lot of Thursday, and Brett Yormark wants to do some Friday games too, which has kind of been out of the, don't want to disturb Friday night lights in the Southwest or whatever. So, but I mean, that's going to be a really big challenge. They were all talking about the short weeks. You've got enough problems, but I do. Ken, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they've got any like TCU to Provo and then coming back, and they would play a home game on the short week, but you wouldn't have any really terrible trips. The tough part's going to be trying to get the volleyball and the tennis teams from Morgantown to Provo a few times a year. They've even talked about having stuff like in St. Louis or Dallas or whatever, bring 4 teams in and play neutral site games for sports other than football. So that's one of the things that and Central Florida is going to have 6,700 miles of road trips this year. So it's going to be challenging to the kids and coaches and everybody.
Yeah, I mean, Yancey and Ken and Bo, you think about this. Wait till we have the Wednesday night volleyball game, the Wednesday night bowling match, Rutgers at Southern Cal. I think they're going to – Yancey, I think the Big Ten's going to start carpooling or air pooling. There won't be any bus trips, will there, Yancey?
Well, I mean, that's the problem with what happened here with the realignment of conferences and teams jumping over from different regions, right? I mean, just think about USC and UCLA now. I mean, it's going to be exciting for a few years. The fans are going to travel like a Dickens over there to LA and go soak up and go see Hollywood and all that. But what happens 8-10 years down the road, right? If you were going to have a natural alignment, why don't you get like the Big 12 and Big 10? I mean, like Nebraska did, right? That you're not really traveling that far away for Nebraska now to go to most of these Big 10. But like Maryland, when they took a jump way over, it's just West Virginia, that's another one that went to the Big 12 there. How many people from over there in West Virginia are traveling to Texas to go see a football game? It's just they need to be smarter. You don't need the SEC. At least they're getting connecting states all the way around. What if they picked up someone in Utah? Right? What if they got Utah and then they got Rutgers? Just for TV ratings, right? Yeah, and that's what it's all about is TV ratings. Let's don't kid ourselves, because that's what is carrying the bills. That's why they're not really worried about how many fans are in the stands anymore, because the TV money is diluting the money that they were used to have to live on by fan attendance. So they just got to get smarter, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, I think about Maryland. Crab cakes, the Chesapeake Bay. I think. Remember the movie Wedding Crashers? Christopher Walken and that family had that estate out there in the Bay, and Bradley Cooper played the total jerk, And then I think about in the upper Midwest there, I think about Norm in Fargo, how's the fricassee there, Norm? Yeah, good. You've got a clash of cultures there. I mean, fricassee and crab cakes, goulash and oysters. Where do you get the Southern Cal people going to Minnesota in November for the game? Of course, it's outside now. They have an outside stadium again in Minnesota, which, look, guys, did it get any better growing up watching the Vikings and Bud Grant play out in the snow? Now, they may not agree, but you know what? They loved it. That's their culture. I mean, do you think of Vikings on the beach? Maybe the beaches of Newfoundland or Scotland or something like that, with everyone there in the Viking movies. By the way, I've become quite an authority on Vikings because my wife is obsessed with The Last Kingdom and all these ones about Uhtred. But what's the deal with everybody? Ethelrod, Ethelson, Ethelzil. You know, I just remember Ray Stevens in that song, The Streak. I was out there and my wife's getting a damn orange drink. And I said, don't look, Ethel. But it was too late. She'd already been in the streets. Yancey wrote that song, by the way, didn't you?
God,
yeah, I wrote that song.
All right,
wow.
let's switch gears. I'm all over the place. We've run out of creamer. I can't have any more coffee. But I think about fricassee, and I think about Ken out in Austin. And, you know, Yancey is a big concert goer, concerteur, you may call him. My kids, I mean, they'll end up sometimes, we're in Austin, Dad, to see the Panic, you know. I mean, Ken, Texas, like you said, everybody's going to want to give the Bronx cheer to Oklahoma and Texas on their way out the door. I don't think you'll see. You remember when Judd Heathcote, former Michigan State basketball coach, was retiring? You know, he looked like Mel from Mel's Diner, you know, that old TV show. Mm-hmm. They were playing at Indiana, and they put a giant rocking chair out there in the middle of the court as a going away for him. Are there going to be any going away? Goodbye, Texas. We hate to see you go. We will miss you so. Can't we all get along?
I tell you, you know, the Texas fans had started last year because when Texas played Oklahoma State up in Stillwater last year, somehow Oklahoma State went the entire game without having one holding call. Remember that? Not one.
Sounds like Alabama.
Hello, Birmingham. Hello, Birmingham. Do you read me?
Exactly. And it was just like, how is this possible? And you know, I have a ref friend of mine, and we were talking about that after the game. And he goes, "Look, I can call holding on every play if I want to. Yeah. You know, it's just a matter of how blatant it is." And so, I mean, and again, you know, and I never, you know, I'm one of these guys, I never blame anything on the refs. Okay. Mm-hmm. You have to play through the refs. You have to play through, you know, bad calls, all that stuff. But I think, you know, a lot of fans think that I've seen on boards and things like that. And, you know, take that with a lot of grains of salt, but they really think that they're concerned. And I'm surprised nobody asked this question. Because I think they didn't think they would get a good answer anyway. But I think a lot of fans are concerned that Texas and OU are going to get jobbed a lot by the Big 12 officials this year on the way out. And that's just the way, you know, they feel like, you know, that if there's going to be a call going one way or the other, it's going to be against Texas or Oklahoma, just because, I mean, there's no love lost with those teams leaving. In fact, you know, Yormack, when he was talking about his accomplishments for 2022, he said, we accelerated the leaving of Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC. And the way he said it was, he meant it in a positive way, but it sounded to me, the way it came across was, you know, we got these guys the hell out of here a lot quicker. It's the way I heard it. But he was trying to make it like a positive to do. And he goes, it worked well for everybody. It's like, okay, all right. But I tell you what, let's go back to that for a minute. I really like Yormack. I think he is, I mean, you know, remember, I loved him last year because when he came in, you know, he's worked with he's a straight on New Yorker, has that great New York accent, which I wondered how that would play down here in Texas and everything. When, you know, we have accents of our own, but, you know, he was talking about all the things he does with Beyonce and Riri and, you know, the taking the Brooklyn Nets all over the place. And
NASCAR,
NASCAR, you know, he's a mover and a shaker and a showman. And, you know, and he's done a lot of interesting things. And now he said that, you know, there's going to be a halftime at the Big 12 championship game this year, that there's going to be an honest to God halftime show, you know, like the Cowboys have, and like, you know, at the Big 12, like at the national championship game. And so he's going to take the Big 12 to Mexico, play some exhibition games down there. Now, who would have thought of that? And of course, you know, my first thought was, you know, it would be a a Texas football team that they want to see play in Mexico City, but they got to pick somebody else now. But he's thinking of a lot of different things. So I'm kind of ribbing him a little bit on that. I thought that was an interesting way to position it as we accelerated the move of Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC. But he's a guy that's making things happen in the Big 12, and he's definitely turning up a lot of rocks.
Well, look, you love press conferences where there's entertaining people there. I remember one of the best Saturday Night Lives ever when Peter Sarsgaard was on there, and he was at the International Pirates Convention. And the guy's out there with a parrot on his shoulder and an eye patch and a hook for an arm. And he goes, "Well, I got a question for you there." And he goes, "Well, go ahead with your question there, sir." And he goes, "Well, if a fella was wanting to get him a good roast beef sandwich, where might he go?" He goes, "Arby's." "Well, if a fella was wanting to do a little bit of duck hunting in some green timber with rice fields, where might he go?" "Arkansas." You think about fun. And Yancey, we all loved the days when Steve Spurrier would get up there and, different coaches over the years. And Yancey, at media days this year, put the candles on the cake, make your wish and blow the candles out. What do you want to see? I love what they're talking about, Brett Yormark. That guy's going to be successful because the one thing they got in the Big 12, being headquartered in Dallas, Fort Worth, I got to say it, the Metroplex, the over and under, 4 times down the show. How about the metropolitan area? They've coined that phrase. Yancey, what questions do you want to ask at SEC Media Day, like what Ken and Bo were talking about? And thank y'all for bringing this perspective because we're SEC centric, but it's like an earthquake fault. It's all connected. What happens here, it reverberates everywhere. What happens out there comes down here. But Yancey, let's go. The Arby's question of the day.
I don't know if it's a question of the day, but what the 2 things I look forward to the most, honestly, are I love when someone gets under Nick Saban's skin and
just call
he goes
Nick.
on his
Hey,
tirade,
Nick,
and it's usually just praising the Alabama program, and he gets in that rat poison and he gets so defensive or so I don't know because that rat poison is not out there this year, right? Not everybody, a lot of people predicted Alabama 3rd in the West, which is absolutely insane. But I want to see Saban. I want to see him go on as one of his tirades. That's always entertaining. And then someone to open the gate to Lane Kiffin to take a jab at Jimbo. Those are really the 2 biggest entertaining moments of SEC Media Days or anything these days to me, because those two will do it. Saban on his tirade and Lane, for whatever reason. I mean, Lane and Saban just can't. They absolutely despise Jimbo, and then the A&M media gets so riled up at Lane Kiffin, and particularly for taking shots at Jimbo and Jimbo. He gets on Saban. He'll punch back, but for some reason he doesn't punch back on Lane. I don't know why, but I would like to see Jimbo punch back at Lane. Give him a nice swipe with the right hand. I want to see. That's fun to me. But the coaches getting into it, just a normal old coach speak is boring. I want to see the coaches get riled up.
Well, hey Yancey, you better get up early on Monday, because right out of the gate at 9:00 on Monday, Jimbo is first on the podium.
Well, I tell you what, unfortunately, Mondays is what I call Money Day. And Money Days is my wife's favorite day. That's the day that I need to get out there and make money. So I don't know. I don't know if Monday.
Well, set your DVR. Set your DVR, man.
I will. I usually have 3 or 4 sales presentations before noon on Mondays, but I will set my DVR. I would love to see Jimbo take a swipe at Lane just at the beginning. I mean, I don't know why Jimbo keeps backing down the lane, but he needs to come back and give him a good old right hook.
When I saw the schedule, I thought that's a really good way to start it out. Sometimes it's Monday and people are just waking up, or they just got there Sunday night and they're still a little slow. But starting off with Jimbo, everybody will have their pens ready, their knives out, and he'll be ready to go.
Well, this is really the the boat is coming at the end of the ocean. The way the Indians used to think of it. I mean, it's is he gonna give the new offensive coordinator control to really run his offense and give him the freedom to do things that he sees fit, or is Jimbo gonna pull an Ed Orgeron outside of that 1 year? Where everything came together and Ed actually took his hands, off of everything and let the OC there and the quarterback there. I'm speaking of Burrows and, the whole clan there, the national championship run. Or is Jimbo going to pull an Orgeron? Is he going to continue to put his hands around everybody's neck over there and run it his way? And I mean, if he does, I think this is the end of the boat. I think it's the end of the era for Jimbo. I don't care what the buyout is. I don't care if it's $500 million. If they pull a 5-7, 6-6, maybe even a 7-5, I think it's over. But I think if he gives Petrino, if he gives him some room and some to really run his offense, and I like that quarterback. And look, they are getting the talent there, not to the Georgia and Alabama level, and especially Georgia. I mean, my gosh, are y'all following recruiting? What Georgia is doing again? Are you kidding me? They got 19 5-stars and 4-star guys over a 92 rating. It's just it's unbelievable. I don't know how I do know how they've done it, but you would think Alabama would round up the troops to do what Georgia's doing. But that's another song and dance for another day. But back to Jimbo, I mean, this is it. This is the story in the SEC. I know Oklahoma and Texas are coming in next year, but they're not here yet, right? So it is about A&M. I mean, this is the last song for Jimbo. If he pulls an Orgeron and he tries to run every single thing over there, especially that offense, he's gone. And so that, to me, is the story of the SEC Media Days. The second story is about Alabama's demise. We always say now Alabama's dynasty's over. It's over. And, folks, it might be over as far as the winning the national championship every year, because what Georgia's doing on the recruiting trails, it cannot be matched by anyone. And they're not recruiting a little bit better than Bama. They're recruiting. It is a gap that even Bama didn't have on other teams during the pinnacle of their recruiting days. So, and look, we could talk about money and all that, but what Kirby Smart, the time and energy that him and his staff spend on recruiting is relentless. It cannot be matched. It wasn't matched by Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss. Of course, you couldn't recruit at that level at Ole Miss as you could at a Georgia or Alabama. It could even be matched at Alabama when Saban was at the pinnacle over there recruiting. They spent 80% of their time recruiting, and it is showing. I mean, look, Georgia could go on a 4 or 5 championship run out of 6 years. And I don't know. It's scary what Georgia's building.
It is.
Well,
and
you'll see, but you'll see all three of you. Well, I'll see Rob there, but you'll see me stand up though. I'll definitely ask Jimbo about playing Texas again so I can get him riled up on that. I gotta have a soundbite and a tweet about that for all my people here in Texas.
I know one thing, one question. Yeah, go ahead, Yancey.
The thing about Jimbo too, and here's the funny thing: he sounds like such a little, just the guy you went to school with. That was the biggest, and just someone you just wanted to slap, right? But I've got a good buddy, Blue Delta Jeans, and Jimbo is one of the advertisers for them and one of the spokesmen. Talking about Russ Weaver, a friend of mine here in Oxford, and he says the guy is as cool as he can be, as funny as he can be, and really a really good person. And that's what I would like for all these coaches to be able to really get to know a coach, right?
Yeah.
And not just on the stage. And he says, man, he's one of the more delightful people just to, shoot the what with it and
Right.
have a cold beer, just talk about different subjects. And so, that's a shame to me, is that you don't really get to know these coaches on a personal level. I think you get to know Nick Saban. I don't think Nick Saban is much different than he is on the podium than he is riding on a boat at a lake, right? I mean, Nick is the guy that is a boat's going next to him, and he's going to put the throttle a little bit harder because he wants to beat the boat. I mean, that's just Nick Saban. But Jimbo as a person, from what I've heard, and I trust Nick, he's a good judgment of character, is really a good guy. He just seems like a whining little weasel on the podium.
Yeah, I mean there are so many. I know people that know Jimbo Fisher, and they are really like him, and these are good people. I don't know him, but
it looks like Warp One Travel likes him.
Yeah, that's right. Well, hey, got a couple of quick questions that have come in here. Here's one from a guy, Warp One Travel. Yeah, Jimbo has a smidge more class. Could be. Here's another question someone's asking. Y'all ready for this one? Is there a possibility, and this is what I would love to see more than anything at SEC Media Days, when the SEC Network set is up there for 47 hours of programming throughout Media Days week, is there a possibility we could see in the flesh Mildred on the set with Paul Feinbaum? By my calculations, Mildred would be 103. Pow. Hey, pow. Oh, my God. Could you imagine that? But look, unbelievable stuff. We run out of time. Yancey, great takes. Ken, Bo, incredible. Bo, you teach journalism, history, traditions, heroes. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Think about what that means. Go out and help people. Give back. Never miss an opportunity to thank people that help you along the way. I cannot thank all three of y'all enough. Doug Dean, before that, Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South. In the first segment, he's not even 30 years old. He takes that journalism seriously. And to everybody out there, man, support our guests. Support our sponsors. Subscribe to them. Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Ken, Bo, tell them about how they can follow you. Great show today, as always. Again, thank you for listening. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, but tag out Bo and then Ken, and then we're out of here.
Yep. At Bo Carter 52 on Twitter, and Texas Sports Daily when you have time. Thank you.
At TexasSixMan.com and Football Writers of America, FWAA.com.
Yeah, and you know what?
Mine is very simple. Just at Yancey Porter.
That's right. And and there's a lot of the real-time newspaper. You can find it on Twitter, but we post stuff all over the place. Thanks, Scott Trout. Great job, guys. I mean, he's right to all of y'all. And RumbleBoxingGym.com was over there yesterday with Ann Camp Lee. My God, every day of the week you can go over there and hit that bag. Just put a picture of your favorite rival coach on there, and think of anything. But those are 45. And by the way, when was the last time we saw a prize fight, 15 3-minute rounds go all the way? Because we remember those tomato cans they used to put out there against Mike Tyson. Their heads about 2 or 3 rounds in would look like a spilt Heinz tomato can, But love it. Great stuff as always. And we'll look forward to seeing y'all all in Nashville or reporting and having y'all on the show from the capital city. Until then, God bless America. Have a great day. We're out of here.